Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the QE2 Centre here in Westminster, and welcome to the Cima AGM for 2015.
We need to respect the past, but equally look to the future by exploring technology to reach our goals. Our work is about precision and timing, which demands trust and judgment, so nothing is out of reach. This is more of a science than many think, and there will always be risks, so minimizing them is essential. We are fine-tuning our skills, developing confidence and achieving success. Become a CGMA and achieve your potential with Cima.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. To begin our morning, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you the President of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, Mr. Keith Luck.
I do enjoy doing that. So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and it's good to see so many friends and members here today. If you're looking for Botox or a facelift, you may well be in the wrong conference. This is our 96th annual general meeting. There are only two things, they told me when I took over the presidency, that I needed to do. How they lied. The first was to chair council, and we've done that. And finally, here today to chair the annual general meeting. And several of you spotted that due to some rehearsals we had earlier, I wasn't wearing my badge of office, so thank you for pointing that out. And it's the last time I get to wear the presidential badge, of course, before handing on later in this meeting. So our notice of the AGM sets out the agenda for the meeting. That notice was circulated to all members in good standing pursuant to Regulation 3.18. Can I take the notice convening this meeting as read? Thank you. I'd like to introduce the top table to you. So working from my far left is Malcolm Ferber, immediate past president, Andrew Miskin, vice president, and Miriam Madden, Deputy President. And to my right, your left, Charles Tilley, our Chief Executive, of course. On his right, Maggie Heisman, Head of Corporate Affairs. Robert Bulling from Morris Turner Gardner LLP, our lawyers. And Stephen Correll from Chantry Vellacott DFK, Chartered Accountants, our auditors. And as in previous years, a representative from the Electoral Reform Service, Alex Loney, is with us. Alex, thank you. He's present to oversee the voting at this meeting, specifically if a poll is required. Malcolm.
We will start with the President's address, which will be followed by the main business of the meeting. There will be an opportunity to ask questions on the individual resolutions as they are put to the meeting. Further questions on general matters of the Institute business will be addressed under item 4. So as immediate past President, it gives me great pleasure to call on the current President to make his address to us. The 81st President of Cima, Keith Luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again for joining us this morning and a very, very warm welcome to Cima's 2015 Annual General Meeting, as I've just said. I'm completing my presidential year with a mixture of satisfaction and great confidence. As I look back over an extraordinary and transformative period in Cima's development, I'm struck by the significant progress that we and our joint venture partner, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, have made. Over the past 12 months, we have taken great strides forward in terms of enhancing the profile and employability of chartered global management accountants around the world. The video you saw a moment ago is an example of how we are raising that profile. I really do like that video. But I'd like to assure all members that as an organisation, our institute is in robust good health and is working harder than ever to underline our core message. That core message is that management accounting is essential for long-term business success. So where are we now? As we all know, today's business world is more complex and challenging than ever before. Organisations in both the public and private sectors are having to contend with a formidable force of change and disruptive trends, combined with increasing demands for greater transparency in business operations and their impact on the wider community and environment. The result is that business leaders are having to raise their game in terms of resilience. They need to know what changes are on the horizon, how this affects their long-term strategy for success, and how to accommodate these changes in their business models. So how can Cima members help resolve these formidable challenges? Well, clearly there is a need for better business and better skilled professionals. And we know that our members are the best finance professionals in the world. And we know that with their unique skills and expertise, they have the potential to lead the way in helping businesses become better in terms of both being successful and sustainable. But this is not enough. Cima and its members must work together to ensure that we turn this potential into reality. Over the last 12 months, Cima has continued on an exciting journey to ensure that each member is not only best equipped to meet the challenges ahead, but they evolve their skills and thrive in this new business environment. Our first step in this journey was to go back to basics and to find out exactly what employers need from their management accountants. We knew that the employability gap, particularly amongst young people, is a particularly big issue. For example, a recent global study of youth and employment by McKinsey found that just 42% of employers thought that today's graduates are adequately prepared for the job market. From this, we could see that our syllabus was in pretty good shape, but we wanted to go further. We need CGMAs to have exactly the right tools and skills to be the first choice for employers. So we started the process by meeting more than 60 employers in Europe, Malaysia, South Africa, the UK and the USA, and then holding round tables with more than 200 organisations around the world. And here I should really add that with our joint venture with the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, we saw great benefit in terms of gaining access to some of the business powerhouses in the US. From this research, we put together a framework of key skills and competencies that our members would need to have maximum impact. And I can confidently say that we now have the most definitive and comprehensive overview of how management accountants can support business in the 21st century. From this base, we've gone on to achieve 3 further milestones. These are our groundbreaking 2015 syllabus and assessment platform. Secondly, the launch of the Global Management Accounting Principles. I'll say more about that later. And the introduction of a personalised member experience in the AICPA Cima Competency and Learning website. So, as I say, let's have a look at those 3 initiatives in more detail. So, firstly, having satisfied ourselves that the CGMA competency framework provides us, as I say, with a first-class foundation to build upon, we then restructured our professional syllabus and examination system around it. And we are very, very proud of the result. The 2015 syllabus has employability designed into it at every level. The changes are evolutionary rather than revolutionary, but they still have impact. 3 main factors dominated the revision. These are additional content in the syllabus with a stronger focus on ethics, shared services, and how the finance function is changing, and the challenges ahead in terms of big data and analysis techniques. Secondly, how we assess the process of learning. And third and finally, an emphasis on continuing professional developments once students have attained membership. And today, our examination process is completely computer-based. In this way, Cima can access a wide range of testing methods and assess a variety of skills and competencies at different levels. And it also provides greater flexibility for students themselves in where they take their examinations, as you can see from recent exams taken on this chart. So as might be expected, these new processes are producing some new, not always welcome or expected challenges. But I'm pleased to say that our students have told us that they appreciate the open and constructive way in which we've responded to challenges and issues. And overall, we are confident we've made the right decision. As we move forward, we will continue to drive home the message that Cima professional qualification is based on quality and relevance. Increasingly, employers are turning to Cima to train their managers because they know that our approach is not based on what the student knows, but how they apply that knowledge effectively in the workplace. So if that's how we're supporting our students in this increasingly competitive and, as I say, volatile global marketplace, I now need to turn to how we're placing our members centre stage when it comes to developing business excellence. And one of the most exciting developments in 2014 was the launch of our pioneering Global Management Accounting Principles. This is one of our most significant initiatives to date, and it's a first for the profession and a huge boost to our members in terms of developing the public profile of management accounting. The new principles, though, are much more than a set of best practice guidelines. They've been designed to enable members to work with their employers, to connect the dots, to ensure a direct line of sight between an organisation's objectives and the management of its performance. This, in turn, transforms our members from business partners to business navigators and, at a more senior level, co-pilots. We believe that the guidance contained in our launch document is a very good start. However, we'll continue to refine and develop that guidance in the coming years, and we need your help in 2 respects. Firstly, I'd like you to champion the Global Management Accounting Principles in your organisations, as I have done in mine. And then I'd appreciate it if you give us feedback once they've been adopted. So how does all this great work connect with wider business needs and challenges? Well, this is where integrated reporting comes in. This new concept in terms of creating a holistic reporting environment is a game changer. Put simply, conventional reporting is no longer fit for purpose. So much of today's corporate value is off the balance sheet. In contrast, integrated reporting tells the whole story. It gives shareholders and stakeholders a clear picture of where a company has been, where it is now, and where it aims to be in the future. And Cima has been actively supporting the Integrated International Reporting Council since its inception in 2010. Central to this relationship is the role of our Chief Executive, Charles Tilley, a member of the Council, and indeed he headed the IIRC's Technical Task Force in formulating that organisation's framework document. And Cima itself began incorporating integrated reporting into its annual review in 2012. Reflecting on the experience so far, I believe the greatest benefit has been in the improvement of clarity of our business model. This has helped us to really hone our understanding of where we, Cima, create value and increase transparency on the risks that we need to manage in order to achieve our own long-term success. So virtually everything we use to run Cima now is structured around our business model, the flip-out chart in your A3 size document. The strategy, the business plan, the monthly management information and KPIs all flow down. And the result is that everyone in the organisation knows what our key objectives are. And this makes it easier to ensure we're all pulling in the same direction. And at the same time, the Institute has produced a considerable body of research to show our members how they can use their management accounting skills to initiate and drive better business through the introduction of integrated thinking and integrated reporting. And so combined with global management accounting principles, we think Cima has developed a really innovative way of laying the right foundations for better business. How does this work? Well, when our new global management accounting principles are combined with the right people, our people, organisations can improve on their best practice, ensuring that they have strong management accounting functions in place. And this allows organisations to move forward with sound, evidence-based decision-making. And once the right decision-making processes are in place, our members can go on to help organisations move, as I say, to integrated thinking and integrated reporting. And this results in an end-to-end view of how business works and a much more comprehensive and, above all, I believe, useful way of reporting to stakeholders and creating a more effective, dynamic, flexible organisation. But while Cima is committed to keeping its finger on the business pulse, it's just as important for our members to keep their skills relevant throughout their careers. As the saying goes, if you snooze, you lose. Through the Cima and CGMA websites, we provide members with a wealth of reports and tools to keep all of us at the cutting edge of business evolution. However, we appreciate that not all of us have the time. We all have busy lives, and we've recently developed a great new website that makes it much easier for you to assess your strengths and weaknesses in the area you're working in and build up the skills you need. The AICPA and Cima Competency Learning and Development website is much more. It's personalised, business-focused. The site is based on the CGMA competency framework I've described and provides a new self-assessment tool that enables us and our members to measure our competency in chosen subjects, assess where there is room for improvement, and choose from a range of resources to sharpen our skills. The site itself can be accessed by all the latest forms of portable IT and phone devices. So now you literally have the tools to keep business relevant at your fingertips. So while Cima strives to support our members' career aspirations and employability as much as possible, we're also looking for ways to encourage you to get involved with the Institute. This year, I'm looking forward to welcoming our 100,000th member, another fantastic milestone. and it gives Cima an ideal opportunity to encourage more members to become involved with the Institute. And during my presidency, I've made a real point of initiating new ways of engaging with our global Cima community and students. 227,000 members and students in 179 countries now. Obviously, this is quite a lot of people to talk to, so we're in the process of developing a number of new events and ways of encouraging you to attend and find out more about Cima as an organisation. One of the findings of our impressive thought leadership work is that to thrive in today's volatile business environment, organisations must put an emphasis on collaboration. It was a theme that came out the Howitt lecture the other evening. Collaboration, the new form of competition. And so in the past year, we ourselves have formed a network of leading alliances with academic and professional organisations, and I've signed MOUs, MAUs in Indonesia, Malaysia, Bangladesh, Singapore and Nigeria, amongst others. And at the same time, we're forging new relationships with decision makers in business hubs such as London, New York and other world cities with global influence. And only last month, I returned from a Cima trip to one of those most influential cities, Beijing. And there I was overwhelmed by how strongly the Chinese government has embraced management accounting. And if I tell you that a key meeting I had there was with the Deputy Minister of Finance. That minister is responsible for the career development of 17 million finance professionals. And he saw management accounting as part of that development. You'll be pleased to hear that in embracing management accounting as essential in the development of sustainable organisations, they're making great progress. And perhaps one day, in the not too distant future, a Cima president may well come from China. And given my background in the public sector, I've been delighted to see so many of our new relationships being forged with governments around the world. And over the past year, I've been able to use my own experience in the public sector, as I say, to enhance rapport with key bodies, Australia, Malaysia and New Zealand, for example. In fact, the head of the finance profession in New Zealand will be in our offices on Monday and Tuesday, and deliberately wanted to follow up on my visit and our global management accounting principles that I presented to him. To give you some importance of the importance attached to management accounting, when I was in Sri Lanka, another little story, I was able to have a one-to-one with the Prime Minister there less than 4 hours after landing. And on my way out, I met the UK High Commissioner, in fact, an individual who used to work for me in finance in the Foreign Office, who told me he'd been in the country almost a month and was only now being granted an audience with the Premier. In terms of partnerships, I'd like to take a moment to look at recent developments with that most significant alliance of ours, our joint venture with the AICPA. And I'm delighted to tell you that last year this relationship just went from strength to strength. And in 2015 we'll be working even more closely, particularly on our thought leadership research. And this year sees a major progression in bringing the standards of our two institutes closer together. And now entry levels for CGMA designation holders have been aligned as part of the process of creating a common academic standard between our two institutes. Crucially, AICPA members wishing to use the designation now have to take the same final examination as their Cima counterparts, as well as sharing common standards for ethics and continuing professional development. Having launched this joint venture only in 2012, we now have a common platform under the CGMA competency framework, encompassing the revised syllabus, the competency and learning website, and professional standards. Any professional institute would be pleased to have delivered as much at this pace. Moving forward, we'll continue to focus on increasing the visibility of and the value, indeed, of our shared CGMA designation around the world. At the World Congress of Accountants in Italy last November, Cima and the AICPA jointly took lead sponsorship, using the CGMA designation as our focus. This was the first time that management accounting took centre stage. The Congress theme was learning from the past, building the future. And that was perfect setting for us to spell out how we are equipping CGMAs to be ready for the next challenge and opportunities to drive, as I say, value across the whole business. So together, Cima and the AICPA have done nothing less than redefine the value of accounting globally and have firmly positioned CGMAs as the business experts of the accountancy profession. The research carried out by our expert thought leadership team has also focused on highlighting new challenges and developments in business. And in terms of developing better business, we've been looking at the subject of leadership. Cima recently joined an expert study group under the title Thinking the Unthinkable, the new imperative for leadership in the digital age. Bit of a mouthful, but that's its title. We're looking at whether leaders are indeed broadening their horizons in terms of new ways of working, or if they are being blindsided by the sheer weight of challenges and data ahead. Cima may not have all the answers, but what we do know is at the heart of good leadership is good decision making. And for good decisions to be implemented, leaders need new metrics and guidelines. So as we progress with this study group, which is part of a broader initiative called Churchill 2015, we firmly believe that our global management accounting principles and the new joined-up practices enshrined, as I've described in integrated reporting, provide the right foundations for sound decision-making. And this, in turn, supports more enlightened and informed leadership. Of course, if we're talking about Cima encouraging better business, it's vital we keep our own house in order. And when I've not been travelling on Cima business, all of my efforts have been focused on ensuring that Cima is in the best possible shape. Last year, I initiated a significant review of our governance. This focused on our communication engagement with members, the effectiveness of our processes, the demographic makeup of our committees, and how decisions are reached and indeed implemented. And as a result of this review, I can assure members that the Institute is indeed well managed, well governed, financially sound, and we have very clear plans for the future in terms of our own strategic direction. And I'm fortunate to conclude my presidential year as Cima settles into its new corporate centre in the heart of London's financial district, the City. It's, for those who've been there, a fabulous new space, and I saw many of you there yesterday, drifting in and through and having meetings, etc. I was otherwise engaged at times with the day job, so apologies. But for Cima to develop to the next stage of our strategy, such a space is essential. If you've not been there, you're missing out. The building is bright, high-tech and cutting-edge, and it's rooted, as I say, in the heart of the global business community. So that reflects just how we'd like the world to see Cima and our members. So as I come to the close, I cannot finish without giving heartfelt thanks to the Cima staff around the world, many of whom I've met, led by Charles and a fabulous SMT, who have provided such excellent support to me and enthusiasm during my presidential year. And I have to say, I'm particularly appreciative of the commitment shown by members in council, in our regions, our areas, our branches, in policy committees and in boards and other ways. It's just been fabulous. Somebody asked me, have you met wonderful people? And I said, yes, everywhere. And being a president while working full-time has, I'm afraid to say, meant that I've had to delegate some of my commitments. But I'm hugely thankful to Cima's immediate past president, Malcolm Ferber, Miriam Madden, Vice President, and Andrew Miskin, the Honorary Officer team for their superb work and support to me and the Institute throughout the year. I mentioned combining a day job, and I must also thank my employer, Serco. Apart from giving me the time and flexibility to carry out my presidential duties, Serco itself has achieved Cima accreditation as a top-level employer and, as I've said, is keen to pilot the global management accounting principles. And it doesn't stop there. They are introducing management accounting and management accounts with more management accountants from top to bottom in our revised organisation. Perhaps, though, more personally and most of all, I have to thank my wife. For those who know me, two things. Firstly, whenever my wife is in the audience when I'm making a speech, I do make a reference to her. And secondly, I do try, whenever I'm at a Cima event, to wear some pink. Indeed, Michelle gave me this pink tie only this morning as she noticed I didn't have any Cima pink on today. So I need to thank my wife, who has rearranged at times a very busy CFO work schedule to accompany me on some of the trips and to deal with things when I'm not at home. Michelle herself is also a Cima Fellow and indeed was asked a number of times if she plans to be another Hillary Clinton and run for the presidential position after me. She said, she's always replied, "My gift to Cima is Keith." However, and in fact, you may know she's just flown in literally this morning from the States to be with us and just managed to make it in time. But the husband and wife team, as I say, has worked really well for us, particularly when we've been travelling. Though I have to confess at times to a few George Clooney moments where it became clear that our hosts and my audience were more interested in the views of my lovely and intelligent wife than my own. And so, as I finally close, I look forward to the next stage of Cima's journey. I wish you all the very best of luck for the year ahead and hope that you feel as proud as I do to be part of this fantastic global community. Thank you. We now move to the resolutions of the meeting, and I call upon Maggie Heisman, as I say, Head of Corporate Affairs, to confirm that we have a quorum present.
I confirm a quorum is present.
Thank you, Maggie. May I draw your attention to the copy of the notice of the Annual General Meeting. I'll not read out the full text of the resolutions, but on each occasion we'll refer you to the notice, and prior to the vote I'll take questions on each resolution, so we'll do questions as we run through. And all votes will be on a show of hands by raising your red attendance cards. And if the vote is inconclusive, it may be necessary to call a poll, and in these circumstances, as I've said, I'll ask the Electoral Reform Service representative Alex to oversee it. And of course, if you have a question, can I ask that you wait for the microphone to be passed to you before you start to speak? And please start by giving your name. And in line with normal practice and delegation that you heard so much about, I'll probably refer some questions, some answers to the Chief Executive, the Senior Management Team, Cima's solicitor, or indeed Cima's auditors or others on certain items as appropriate. And finally, every member here is entitled to vote in a show of hands, even if you've already voted by proxy. And this will not be the case, though, if a poll is called. So if we look at the agenda, resolutions numbered 1, 2 and 3 are ordinary resolutions which require no more than a simple majority to be carried. Item 1, the first item on our agenda, surprisingly, is to receive and consider the report of the Council and the accounts of the Institute for the year ended 31st of December 2014. Can we take the report and summary financial statements on page 2 of the annual report and the accounts in the financial statements as read?
Aye.
And as I've said, are there any questions on this item? There is microphone coming your way.
Daphne Marler.
Daphne. Hi, Daphne.
Hi, Keith. Very helpful to have the primary key performance indicators set out here on the 4th page of the financial performance review. But what I'm rather disappointed by is we don't have the retention numbers for students. Under retain, we don't have the current total number of students and the comparatives. I would like them. You did mention the number quickly as you went through, but me being me, I like it written down.
No.
But it will be very helpful if we have these numbers for the future, I believe. It will make it look a little bit more consistent.
Yes. And the whole intention of our integrated report is to show precisely that. And if through oversight we've not managed to do that, you'll notice it's a bit thinner to try and get the key messages across than has ever been the case before. I'm not sure we have the numbers for this year to hand, but we'll certainly put them in future years.
And budget figures as well, so we can see what the targets were and how they're being achieved.
Okay.
They will be.
Yep. They are. They will be. Thank you, Daphne. Any other questions on our report and accounts? If not, I therefore propose that the report of the Council and the accounts for the year ended 31st of December 2014 be received. Voting, as I say, will be by a show of red attendance cards. So all those in favour, please raise your red attendance card now. Thank you. All those against, please raise your card. Sorry, I'm putting mine down. And all those abstaining, please raise your red attendance card. That's a majority in favour. Alex, do you agree? Thank you. So the resolution has been carried, and for the record, as we've done before, the number of proxy returns received are shown on the screen. Thank you. So we move on to item 2, the second item on our agenda, and it's the appointment of our auditors. And Cima's constitution, specifically bylaw 41, states that this meeting, the annual general meeting, is required to appoint auditors until the close of business at the next AGM. Are there any questions or comments on this item? No? In that case, I propose that we move to a vote on item 2 as stated in the notice of the meeting. Once again, if you grab hold of your red attendance card, can I ask all those in favour raise the red attendance card? All those against? Thank you. And all those abstaining? Thank you. Again, a majority, a simple majority in favour. Alex, do you agree? So the resolution 2, has been carried. And again, for the record, the tally of proxy returns is shown on the screen. Item 3, members' fees and subscriptions for 2016, as it says on the chart. Again, any questions or comments regarding this item? Rod, a microphone is on its way. There must be something about sitting in that part of the room.
Absolutely. It's the awkward step. Rod Davies, I'd like to ask the same question I asked last year at this stage, which was incompletely minuted, in that all that got into the minutes was the supplementary question about, is there a way of getting downgraded from fellow to associate? And there was an action point on the chief executive. If he's taken action, I've not yet seen the result. But the original question was, what am I getting for the extra £13? What is the point of being a fellow these days? I just love that distinction to be made somewhere. We just don't seem to have any justification for an extra subscription.
Apart from the very fine honour, of course, of being elected as a member of council.
No longer applies.
No, I know.
Too many years.
In your case. But in all seriousness, senior leadership, of course, of the profession. One could argue it's a small and marginal amount for that, but to be a senior leader of our profession and indeed help take the Institute forward. I was mindful, actually, Rod, of the question you did ask last time, and as I described in my speech, throughout my year, I've tried to find new ways of engaging with our membership, top to bottom, and fellows are part of that. Actually, a couple of ways. I've been very keen to promote fellowship wherever I've been around the world, and the President does have the privilege of inviting certain people who come to his or her attention to become a fellow, to apply, and indeed I've made good use of the invitation to fellowship, and indeed I track an increase. We do lose people, but an increase in the number of fellows. I've also been keen that as we come up to our 100,000th member, it would be nice if it was a year. It's felt like a long year, guys. But come up to our 100,000th member. And indeed, I've done something where we've invited, in fact, in London, there was a great example. I worked with David Melville in the London Area 1 group. We invited 40 people that had been in the Institute for 40 years. In fact, it wasn't difficult to get 40 people to come to lunch in Chapter Street. It was the last event we did, interestingly enough, in Chapter Street. And many of them were fellows, almost without exception, who, although they'd been in the Institute 40 years, had felt that they had become part of that senior leadership and were really keen to find out what was going on and how the profession was being handed on. So there may not be as much tangible material around that, Rod, I do accept. And if I go back to an idea that we're currently exploring around the invitation to fellowship, is that inviting people to become a fellow, you should also have then a responsibility to introduce, well, I said 3 members to the Institute. You would be given an opportunity to encourage people to join up the fellowship you've just become part of, the community. And others are saying, why stop at 3? Why not, tell them they've got to find 5 new students, etc. And so I think it is incumbent on us to do some of that, but I think we need to take your question away and work further on it. Thank you. Charles, do you want to add anything?
Just to say, there is no process to go back from an associate. So I have, as Chief Executive, investigated the position. It is about the recognition of your skills and seniority and your leadership within the profession.
Thank you. Any more questions on fees and subscriptions? In that case, can I propose we move to a vote on this item as stated in the notice of the meeting? And again, all those in favour, please show your red attendance card. All those abstaining, please show your red attendance card. And indeed, sorry, those voting against, red attendance cards. Thank you. I didn't convince you, Rod. Okay, oh, right, thank you. In that case, there has been, from where I can see up here, a majority in favour. Alex, do you agree? Thank you. And the resolution has been carried. And so again, for the record, a tally of the proxy returns is shown on the screen. So item 4, general, that concludes the business resolutions, but of course I'm happy to take any general questions relating to the Institute business. And again, just to remind people, as Howard explained early on, please could you wait for the microphone, kindly say your name before speaking. Any general questions? Yes, one in the centre, microphone on its way.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning.
Peter Lay,
Peter.
sometime President of Edinburgh Branch. Looking forward to seeing the election of yet another member of that branch, and the first Scottish lady, happily called Miriam and not Nicola, to the prestigious post of Institute President. I have a question which colleagues here should know was made known to you about a month ago, and if I may read it, the failed disciplinary action against Margaret May, a fellow of this institute, spanned a period of several years. What was the gross cost? And I see my very temperamental computer printed gross in capital letters. What was the gross cost to the institute of this venture over that period of time, by which I mean as a minimum the cost of the internal processes, the aggregate of our legal fees, the court award, and an approximation of the cost of people, time, and expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for asking the question, indeed just flagging up, as you said a little while beforehand, that you did want to answer this question. And in fact, I have thought long and hard about the question, and it comes back to a number of things that I was saying in my presidential speech there, Peter, around the type of organisation we are, where we do expect people to work to certain ethical standards, and we have a disciplinary code. And indeed, having a disciplinary process is simply part of cost of doing business in the institute and the sort of organisation we are. I can't go into individual cases. You mentioned one, but I can say that as a professional institute, we do differentiate from others, particularly, say, a business accounting a sort of an MBA, where, frankly, you do your MBA and that's it. We hold our members and indeed students as they're studying with us to a much higher standard of activity. And in having a disciplinary process, council itself has to stand clear of that, any particular disciplinary case. And that's an important distinction, otherwise we are judge and jury ourselves, and indeed all of our processes are overseen by regulators and others, although one could argue that eventually if we were to abuse that process and council got too involved, we would end up in a very difficult position. So there has been, I guess my third point, a process that we have followed as an institute that has been set in train when disciplinary matters arise. And sometimes, as your question indicated, Peter, that covers several years. And I think the particular celebrated case you mentioned, 2010 to 2013, so technically not in the report and accounts and the business we're reviewing. But actually I have looked into disciplinary matters, and indeed as an institute we've made sure that our processes are firm and robust. And indeed we have conducted a review and found that they are fit for purpose, and we have followed those processes. There's always a few areas we can tweak, and indeed some suggestions came as the result of that to council at the last AGM just to tighten up. And what I have seen is that we run about 35 to 45 disciplinary cases a year. There aren't a huge number compared to, say, other institutes or other types of professional organisation. And the costs themselves have been and are contained within budget. And indeed, in our processes, we agree with external parties caps on our cost, as you say, because you're concerned about the cost to members. One of the things that struck me was just how expensive, because we're now a global organisation, we have been an international organisation, the costs of overseas cases are particularly high. You can imagine there is travel and translation and other issues from time to time. So cases are unique at times, but overall we have lived within our budgets and within the limits that have been set in the planning processes. And you mention a celebrated case where indeed for the first time the Institute did have a judicial review, but again the review costs were met, the Institute's costs were met by our insurance. So again there was no real cost to members. So I can't comment on any individual case, but I think to give you a sense that in terms of managing the overall process, I'm confident that we have done the right thing. We follow process and we keep a proper separation. It's just unfortunate from time to time, difficult and complex cases do come up, and as I say, sometimes the overseas cases. I'm looking down in this corner because Gail, who is in charge of professional standards, may want to add anything. If you want to add anything, yeah.
Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Gail Sterling. I'm a member of the senior management team, and I look after governance and professional standards, and that includes the management of the professional conduct regime. Thank you for your question. I thank you, President, as well, for your response. Just to provide further reassurance around this, certainly in my recollection, we've never had to go back to Council to ask for additional funds to manage our portfolio of conduct cases. These are part and parcel of our operating costs. They're very, very carefully managed, scrutinised, and of course we're held accountable for them. We maintain a link with the Audit Committee. We ensure that if there are escalating case costs at any point in time, that they are aware of that. We can provide explanation and context for that. And certainly we will maintain contact with the Audit Committee Chairman too to ensure there are regular updates. So it's, from my standpoint, I know the conduct team are very committed. They will scrutinise every bill that comes in. Any form of association with a legal partner who's assisting in conduct work, we will seek to negotiate a case capping arrangement so that the costs don't escalate, they're not allowed to escalate. And to date, that's been managed very successfully.
Thank you, Gail. Peter wants to come back, I think, and then there's a further question over on the left. Is it Peter?
Some very interesting responses, but unfortunately not too appropriate to the actual question. This was really quite exceptional. It was a major incident. It went to the High Court. The judge overturned it and awarded very substantial costs against the Institute. And I asked about the gross cost, not how much of it was covered by insurance premiums. And I'm very disappointed that we are apparently continuing to conceal from members the cost of such an extraordinary incident. The numbers which have been flying about suggest that the gross cost of this was something over £750,000, one way and another. And it would have been very reassuring, I think, to members at large to be told the truth. And I'm very disappointed that we are no longer apparently to be trusted with the truth. I find that a shame, particularly in view of your splendid speech a few moments ago.
Thank you. I really don't want to add anything further to what I've already said, but your points are noted, and I just confirm that we have followed the process. I don't want to get into any individual case itself. We have managed the costs within an overall portfolio, and any costs incurred, as you say, because of the JR have been met by our insurance and our insurers as part of, as you would expect, good governance of an organisation. But thank you, Peter. There was a question to the left and then one to the right. Shall we do that? Oh, Daphne again.
Thank you, Keith. Daphne Marler here. Supplementary question to that, and I understand completely what you're saying and that you don't wish to discuss an individual case, but one of the things which did happen when we introduced the new systems was an assurance that we would not spend huge amount of money with lawyers, etc., with due respect to our colleague here, because it would not necessarily be helpful to us, but I think now something has happened which has cost an awful lot of money. We really ought to have a better idea as to how much the Institute is spending in pursuing all the various conduct cases. At one stage, the cost was met by the member in practice fees, I seem to recall, or there was a rough correlation between the two numbers. I'm not quite sure that that was the right thing either, but never mind, that was the decision at the time. So I think it's more of a general concern that we should know what sort of departmental costs we're talking about, bearing in mind we do have to have a good and sound process. And having been chair of the relevant committee in the past, I would say that I do support the work of the department completely, and I wouldn't wish to undermine it in any way. However, I would add that if you do claim on your indemnity insurance, unfortunately the premia then do rise. So we need to look at what we're doing and how we're managing this so we don't have a greater risk in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. And points well made. Indeed, that's why we conducted a review and have brought about some changes in how such cases would be managed going forward. You mentioned, I think, the sort of departmental spend. We don't break that down by timesheet, etc., on any particular case, but in the accounts there is a section around spend on standards, regulation and compliance. Gives a sense of the size of the budget in that particular area. And as to insurance premium, I think it's probably negligible. I haven't actually looked into that, but that's an interesting one we can follow up. Anything else that we want to add from Charles or others to Daphne's question? No? There was one to the right, sir.
Yes, Ian Burbage. I was going to make the same point about the insurance because I think most of us who've had household insurance have noticed premiums going up, and I did feel it was a bit disingenuous to say that it was totally covered that way. But my main point was I hadn't really followed this case hugely, but I'm so pleased that the Institute lost. But my question was the Council aware of the great disquiet among ordinary members, and I haven't spoken to anyone about this, but we all read the financial press and so on, and was the Council aware of the great concern among a lot of members who felt very uneasy about the whole approach and about the apparent involvement of internal politics? Thank you.
I think it's fair to say that Council is very well connected with the membership, so it would be surprising if Council wasn't concerned. And indeed, as you've heard, in particular, the Audit and Risk Process Committee was kept firmly up to date, and I think a number of one-to-ones with the then chair of that committee, and indeed a sense of where this was in the organisation. You mentioned the Institute lost, that's correct. Actually, the Institute was given leave to appeal, but I think in the interests of the Institute and everybody involved, there was certainly a view amongst Council and the elected members of drawing a line there, and indeed I think this is now behind us. We have learnt we can draw a line under it, and frankly we have moved on as an organisation, as I say, having learnt some lessons, but all your points are noted and well made. Thank you. One more in the centre. Thank you.
President, Peter Laszlo. Changing the subject, I note the accounts, particularly the expenditure, are analysed in a way which I find slightly quirky: acquire, deepen, retain, and so forth. And really, just as a result of the recent discussion concerning ethics and the cost of disciplinary processes, I thought I'd have a quick look and see where this might conceivably be. So I thought, it must be in reputation and research, which is 18 million quid, which is a big number. Must be in there somewhere. regulatory bodies, standards, regulations and compliance. The analysis that is being presented with all these, this type of presentation is totally uninformative, and I hadn't really cottoned onto this until I tried to locate something specific. My question, therefore, is, in determining this presentation of cost headings, did anyone stop to think, would an outsider have the slightest idea what you were talking about?
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for your question again. So the accounts themselves, as I say, follow the integrated reporting format, and that is our business model, as I said earlier, does come or is explained in the fold-out. So we do acquire students, we deepen our relationship with them. As they become members, we retain a relationship, and indeed to go on to fulfil other needs in terms of employability, etc. So the integrated report is presented in terms of our business model with expenditure along the way. I think you referred to spend on standards, regulation and compliance, and as I said earlier, that is where the bulk of Gail's department and people and costs do fall. And in fact, if anything, I think they've been coming down over the years, as indeed we've managed this whole process and, as I say, tightened up all the controls around this area. I certainly find this a more informative way of explaining what we're doing as an organisation and a business model. Financial accounts in their traditional form actually now get to a point where I think they become a health and safety risk to those who carry them around. And we've tried to explain how we spend our money and indeed raise our income against, if you like, that segmental analysis that really is our business model. I probably ought to ask John if you want to add anything further. John is our CFO and COO. If you want to add anything, you don't have to. He's thinking about it. To the way our accounts are presented. I should say, actually, that the toughest job in the world is to be the finance director in a finance institute. John.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have, as you noted, changed the format this year. It is aligned to our business model, and we continue to evolve, and we will take your comments on board. It's our objective to be as transparent and clear as possible, and this is quite a big change for us, and we'll continue on this road. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I just say, which is nothing to do with that particular answer, but just to say that actually last year's annual report actually did receive an award for being the best integrated reporting award. That doesn't mean to say there isn't room for improvement, but there is a lot to go, and part of your comment also goes to IFRS, which certain people would have different views about how good they are. So that's a different issue, which is actually on our agenda as well.
My goodness, we're getting into a debate about accounts now.
Yeah, exactly.
This must be an accounting AGM. Sorry, did I miss other questions? Was there some more over here? Can I come down here to gentleman 3 rows back? We have met before. I'm just struggling to remember your name. And then, Rod, you've put your hand up again. And are there others? Oh, sorry. David, I mentioned you earlier in terms of our 40 over 40 and our prize winners' lunches and dinners we've been doing.
I'll wait until the others.
Have we got the question down here, Rebecca? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, my name is Dharmalingam. Yeah, we have reached already 100 years Cima. You know, in 2019, we are going to celebrate 100 years. And at the same time, you said to me this morning, we have 100,000 members also. That's a very happy news and very good news. But my one worry is, we have the institute in Portland Place on the first, and the second we move into the Pimlico, and now we are again moving to Moorgate. Why can't we have a one permanent place so that we can have another 100 years, same address?
We had quite an interesting debate, as you would imagine, about, well, should we stay in London and where would you go in London, etc., all of those things. It was, I think, a really interesting aspect of my presidential year, and as I said, I'm really proud of the Helicon building that we've moved into. I think we spoke earlier, didn't we, and I said if you've not been there before, you should come. And indeed, I was privileged enough to be involved with others here on the top table with an opening of the Helicon event And in fact, we had members of the International Integrated Reporting Council who attended because they were in town. The president of IFAC, no less, Olivia Kirtley, and indeed the FRC, and indeed our keynote speaker is the chair who was there. We made a really big event of opening that building. But actually, in the sort of business environment we're in, Chapter Street no longer served and was no longer fit for purpose. For those who've been there, council meetings and meetings of committees took place in the basement. It was dingy, it was difficult, the IT wouldn't work, the telephone system wouldn't work. We're in a very different environment now, and indeed the last council meetings at the back half of the year, I managed to move out of Chapter Street and we go to a purpose-built venue. It will be a theme of mine, or probably Miriam's now, to take forward, that we go to councils where you could do council meetings and committee meetings by teleconference, etc., and use all the modern technology, not physically having to come together. It would be lovely if we had our building, but the cost of maintaining and updating that would be a challenge. I think, frankly, I think I know why we moved to Chapter Street, because, frankly, the Institute had some difficulties at the time in all sorts of areas and needed to sell its best asset in order to continue to survive and pay its way. But that was never going to be, I think, a long-term solution, and I think the Helicon building gives us much more flexibility going forward. And I'd really encourage people to come there. There's a lovely sort of members area, reception area in the front. We haven't lost the benefit of the Cafe Connect we used to have. And I think staff of, Charles, you may want to say something about staff. It's, they come to work with a spring in their step.
Well, we certainly hope so. And just to say, it was actually the people who did undertake that work, it was a remarkable achievement. We moved out on a Thursday before Easter and just literally arrived on a Tuesday after Easter, and people were effectively working within an hour or two. It was a terrific achievement by those who led that, which was nothing to do with me, I have to say. It was a really, really good achievement. And please do come and see us there.
Thank you. Yes, please do. Sorry, so I've lost track of where we are. David, I think you had indicated. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman. David Melville, past President, and also currently the Chair of the UK Area 1, which we call Cima London for short these days. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Keith, for the support that you've actually given Cima London over the last year. We've had a number of major new initiatives, of which you've mentioned, and you have really supported these, and I thank you for that. I also thank you for the budget that we were given to be able to do it, and long may it continue, Miriam. Coming back to what we've just been talking about over this last question and answer session, you know, at the end of the day, we've had some issues regarding disciplinary matters. We have the famous case. Whether or not we could have answered it more precisely or less precisely, I'm not going to comment because it's been heard. However, last Wednesday, we went to the Howitt lecture, and the lecture was all to do with trust. And we all know for a fact that you can lose trust in an instant and it can take you ages to rebuild it. And what this is all about is how a modern organisation has to rebuild trust. First of all, it can't dwell on the past. It has to look forward. It has to do things slightly differently. Words like transparency, openness, collaborative efforts, all of these came about, all very good stuff. All very pertinent to where we may have been and what we may have lost for various reasons. But we have to put it behind us and we have to move forward. So that's the first message. You talked about a conduct review, basically that you've looked at all of the procedures and processes. Now, I happen to know whether I should or not know, but I happen to know what that looked like, what those recommendations were. And when you looked at it, you could actually say, yes, that would ensure that we don't get ourselves in the sort of situation that we have in the past. My question is very, very simple. I guess it's yes or no. Has that review been implemented yet?
So we're still implementing it, David. I'll have to ask Gail probably to give us an update on precisely where we've got to. There were a number of changes, as I say, that were made at the last AGM that permitted us going forward, and I think some of the changes only become effective, is it July this coming year? Can I just mention the Howitt lecture, because that was a fabulous event. And indeed, that was what, I'm trying to remember the days in the week now, Thursday, Wednesday night. Thursday, we were actually in the Helicon building. Indeed, Friday, a number of us were at various meetings, as I indicated earlier in my speech. I saw people popping by. And we did sit down as a team and with Charles and others and talk through trust and what we as an institute might get out of that. I think the Howitt lecture itself concluded that organisations are being held to a higher standard, but that actually no organisation gets it right all of the time. And indeed, our institute is probably no different. We have had difficulties in the past for all sorts of reasons, but I think, as you heard, I hope, from my presidential speech, a really positive place. We are in really good position to go forward. I note that you're keen, David, to draw a line under matters, many of which predate any of our involvement, I think, on top table. And as you say, hopefully we have put, I can't guarantee, never say never, but can't guarantee that we won't find ourselves in difficulty for one reason or another in future. But we have addressed what we thought were the issues and tried to make sure that they won't occur in that same way again. And I think you wish to add, Gail? On where we've got to in implementing the recommendations. Thank you.
Hello again. David, thank you for your question. We have started to implement the conduct review recommendations. We had an agreed timetable which went to Council and to the PSC. We're implementing the changes on a phased basis, and the PSC gets a report, an update report at every meeting, so they're very closely engaged. And whilst it's an operational matter, again, as issues of trust, we want to make sure that they're aware of what we're doing and that they can rest assured that it's all happening. In terms of the formal recommendations, as soon as they were approved by Council, the next stage was for us to go to an independent QC to receive advice on whether or not what we were doing was in best practice, and she confirmed that it was. There are a few small modifications that she suggested, so we went back to PSC, who agreed with them, and then we continued to roll out the changes. So far, we've now formally drafted the new regulations, which Council approved in March, and they will come into effect on July the 1st. We've enhanced our guidance around what constitutes a complaint. It's really around raising awareness, not about structural changes. What constitutes a complaint, a better explanation of discouragement of vexatious complaints. We've rewritten the conduct microsite on Cima Global. We've produced a checklist of what constitutes acceptable evidence so that people are in no doubt as to what that looks like. We've introduced better guidance around the first stages of the process, where there seem to be some misunderstandings as to what the process was. We've also revised timelines for party communications in favour of respondents to make sure they have ample time to respond to any allegations raised against them. We've also looked at our internal benchmarking procedures. It's not just the outward-facing piece, it's also what we're doing and how we're doing it. So they've also been reviewed and they've also been made more robust. We've made changes to disciplinary committee sanctions. We've also put more information on our conduct committee members into the public domain, so anybody involved in a process or having to face an investigation or disciplinary tribunal will know who they're about to face, will understand their background, and we hope it won't feel quite so daunting. We've also updated our complainant and respondent guidance, and we've also updated the guidance for use by our internal teams, so that any member or student who is involved in this can get in touch with Cima and can receive appropriate guidance on the process. Thank you.
Gosh, I hadn't realised you'd got quite such a long list, but an awful lot being done, David. Thank you. Good. Any other questions, general questions? Sorry, Rod, you did indicate that's right, and then we probably need to move on. But Rod, microphone's on its way, probably from both sides of the room.
If it was, I'd be in stereo. One of the major USPs of our qualification for the best part of the last 96 years has been that nobody is admitted to membership unless their practical experience has been rigorously assessed by 2 fellows, which is an entitlement you missed earlier, but never mind. I only this morning find that there are apparently major changes afoot in the whole assessment procedure. And I wondered if you'd like to take the opportunity just to tell us all what on earth's going on, and indeed how it ties in with the current transitional arrangement for CGMA, where CPAs can just tick a box and say they've done some management accounting, which does seem to me to be a little insufficient.
Thank you, Rod. Absolutely, and perhaps I didn't cover that enough, but you're quite right. We're also looking at our practical experience requirements. It's logical, having looked at our competency framework, our syllabus, how we examine the syllabus, which is now computer-based. Frankly, how do we now do the second half of the qualification, because it's examination and experience, as you say, and assess practical experience? And in this day and age, the 2 members getting together and looking at documents, even though they're now transmitted electronically, may not be the way forward. So we are doing some work on, in the 21st century, is there another way of doing that? And there's some really interesting computing and technology that allows you to record and cross-check practical experience. A new system now, which if you say you work for an employer, will go off and check details. We don't have to take it on trust. You've described that employer and what you do, etc. There's a lot more information about people and organisations out there. So there is work being done and is being piloted and described around that. I don't know whether Noel or somebody wants to answer later. The second half of your question, though, is an interesting one. We're coming together and working closer, as I've described, with the AICPA, and they do have currently a different practical experience requirement, which is a self-certification requirement, which itself, I have to say, and we're very clear about this, is a transition arrangement. So as we're looking to how do we do practical experience, we're working with the AICPA on how CPAs would record and sign off their practical experience. And indeed, we want to work towards the one system and a common process. But it is a work in progress. You come and you find us partway through that activity. It's not fully there, but we're aware that we need to have a common standard system for both organisations. Does Noel want to, or Charles?
I just wanted to say, first of all, I mean, as of the 1st of January, we have completely common processes in terms of everybody has to pass the final CGMA examination. Everybody has to, the CPD policies are the same, the practical experience policies are the same, the education standards are the same, and the CPD standards are the same. So complete alignment in that regard, as well as the underlying ethics standards. And we are then in discussions with AICPA about how we pilot a new approach in terms of looking at practical experience, addressing specifically AICPA members in the first instance. But with regard to our own practical experience requirements and the changes that have been developed there, Noel, you might want to just add comments.
My name is Noel Tego. I'm Executive Director for Education. In terms of the practical experience requirements, just 2 things have changed, really. One is the requirements themselves. We had to realign the requirements to the syllabus, and because we've moved to a competency-based syllabus, the requirements are competency-based. That's number one. We've also changed the technology that we use in getting data about the competencies and the experience. That evidences the competencies, and so that is what is going to be used. In terms of assessment of it, we still have 2 fellows who would assess it, and then where there are adjudications, etc., the same things would happen in terms of that. So the technology has changed, some of the requirements have changed, but in terms of how we evidence, how that is assessed, we are using a very similar approach to the paper-based system.
Thank you. Thanks, Rod. Good. And I did say that would be the last one, but Aubrey, again, another past president, I didn't see you there under the lights, Aubrey, sorry.
That's all right, Keith. And Aubrey Joachim, past president of the Institute. I thought this item number 4 should be not only general questions, but comments as well. The point I want to add is that very often at these meetings, and being a democratic and a membership body, I'm sure everyone is entitled to ask questions. But I think one of the things we have to consider is not just looking at the negative side of how the Institute has had things happening to it, but also we should be able to celebrate the positives. And over the years, we have seen this Institute grow. Many of you would be hearing perhaps from the UK perspective, but as a past president and as a member of Cima, I travel the world. And by the way, I pay my own fare for that, by the way. And what I notice is that this Institute is gaining by leaps and bounds. It's going ahead. It's beating the competition, no doubt. We see the good things that are happening, right? And therefore, I think we should celebrate what our future is going to be rather than looking at the past. We're talking of global management accounting principles, Mr. President. We are not forensic auditors looking at the past, but we are those who are leading our organizations into the future. And I think that is a comment I'd like to make. And look at our future and the way we are going to reach those significant milestones that you alluded to earlier. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Aubrey. I could think of no better way of ending the general question session than that. The AGM really should be a celebration. I hope you got a sense of the celebration of the passion and enthusiasm with which the Institute is driving forward from my speech. And indeed, we've talked about how the AGM itself could have a different format to celebrate much more in future. We obviously have a statutory format we have to follow for governance purposes. But beyond that, again, lots of things unfinished, which I'm going to pass to Miriam. So watch this space, I think. But celebrating successes and looking forward, absolutely. Thank you. So with that, can I move on to item 5, which is the election of Vice President, Deputy President and indeed President for 2015 and 2016. I call on Miriam Madden, Deputy President, and Vice President Andrew Miskin to remove their badges of office. The 3 resolutions under item 5 are ordinary resolutions, so again only require a simple majority. First is the election of Vice President. And I propose that this meeting hereby elects David Stamford as Vice President of the Institute for the ensuing year. All those in favour, please raise your red attendance card. Just getting mine here. Fantastic. All those abstaining, please raise your red attendance card. And any against, please raise your red attendance card. So as I see it, there's been a simple majority, in fact, a overwhelming majority here in the room. Alex, do you agree? Thank you. And so, again, for the record, the tally of proxy returns is shown on the screen. And so the resolution to elect David Stamford as Vice President has been carried. David, would you please come forward onto the stage, please? Well done, mate. Well done. Fantastic. Good. David, I invest you with your badge of office and invite you to take your place at the top table. Before doing so, we'll have a photograph.
I believe so.
Thank you. Wonderful. So we now come to the election of Deputy President, and I propose that this meeting hereby elects Andrew Miskin as our Deputy President of the Institute for the ensuing year. All those in favour, please raise your red attendance card. Against, please raise your red attendance card. And abstentions, please raise your attendance card. Again, a majority in favour. Alex, do you agree? Thank you. And again, for the record, the tally of proxy returns is shown on the screens now. So I declare that the resolution to elect Andrew Miskin as Deputy President has been carried. Andrew, would you please come forward? Very well done, mate. Very well done. Thank you. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brilliant. So, we now move to the election of the 82nd President of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and I hereby propose that this meeting elects Miriam Madden to the office of President of the Institute for the coming year. All those in favour, please raise your red attendance card. Any against, please raise your red attendance card. And any abstentions, please indicate with your card. So again, there's been a majority in favour. Alex, do you agree? Thank you, Alex. And for the record, the proxy returns are also shown on the screen. So the resolution to elect Miriam Madden as our President has been carried. Miriam, would you please come forward to the lectern? Okay, thank you. That's not it.
No, you've got it.
Oh, got it. Can I ask you all to stand for the investiture of our President? So, Miriam, you've been formally elected to the office of President, and it's my pleasant duty to pass on to you the insignia of that office. I do not, however, consider that my duty ends here, and in accordance with tradition, I call upon you to declare that during your term of office, you will devote yourself to the interests and advancement of the Institute. On your part, therefore, I seek your assurance that you accept this trust, that you will fulfil it faithfully and assiduously, and that before handing on your responsibilities, you will seek a similar assurance from your successor.
I promise to do so.
I invest you with this badge of office as a mark of your high station.
Thank you.
And I hand you the Institute gavel as a symbol of the authority invested in you.
Thank you.
Do we shake hands or do that way? Or? Have you got it? You hold it. Thank you. Well done.
My first duty as President is to present Keith Luck with the past President's badge.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
If I could ask you to please be seated. As I have not been notified of any further additional business for this meeting, I have a pleasure in drawing the meeting to a close. I thank you all for attending this year's AGM, and I look forward to seeing most of you again next year. I declare this meeting closed at 12:40. Thank you.